second part of edit requires the following changes. Obviously at the moment, if we click on edit, if I decide that Minnie has finally said yes to Mickey and they've decided to get married, I click on save and I get a huge list of error messages telling me that there's something wrong. It's this first line that I'm interested in, partly because it's saying it fails, that tells me the page and the line number on that page, which is number 2. If I go to session number 7, if I load up the edit page, then I can see that it's this line that's causing the problem, and of course here in ID, and therefore it's saying, oh, there is no ID, I'm falling over, and it crashes, can't more because everything else depends upon this statement, and then goes off and builds the form. And we can see that all the lines have an issue here, and then it builds the form. Difference with session number 8 is that we click on edit, we get the same result. This time I'm going to decide again that Minnie has said yes. We click on save, and now we can see the data's changed. So what's changed between these two pages? Well, we've already seen the edit page for session 7, so let's have a look at the one for session 8. And we can see that the lower part hasn't changed at all, but the upper part has changed quite significantly. We can notice here that we're looking at this section, this small section here. There's the query and the ID, and in fact if we look here, that still exists there. There is no change at all in this part, and that's because it's this part that does the saving. This part still does what we want it to when the page first loads, but of course once we click on the action, once we click on the submit button, what happens is it goes off and we want it to save. And what was happening previously was it was trying to reload the page and it was going, hold on, there's no ID, but we're actually not interested in this part at all. We're not loading up the form to have text put into it. We're actually this time intending to save and then take us back to the home page. So we do the same thing. We do a check for the get function, and if the function exists, then we check what that function is. It didn't exist before, we didn't need it before, but now we can see that it's a save function. So if there's any function, then it will look to the next line and say, is it a save function? If the function is not save, then in all cases it will drop out, it won't do any more, and it will continue with the form as normal. It will obviously generate an error if someone puts func in there when the form's there, click on submit, but actually it won't do because submit simply wouldn't work. So if you try to do this, type this in yourself, it simply wouldn't work. So this here catches the fact it's save. By the way, you might ask yourself, well, why don't I just simply do that and forget this test here? Well, because it can generate error messages. You really should check that there is a function before checking what the value of that function is. And so PHP generates errors if you're not careful, particularly on developmental systems. So if is set just clarifies if it's set, then do the work. But if it's not set, then don't bother. So what happens when it does equal save? Well, then what it does is it sets the ID not to the get ID, but to the hidden ID here. So this is the post, and that's what that's for. That hidden field is to allow the ID to be sent via post. Now I could quite easily have included it in the get statement, but I wanted to show you how to use hidden boxes to pass information that can then be collected via the post parameter. It means it doesn't appear up here, doesn't become an elongated line, so when we're looking at the page up here, this doesn't become monstrously long. It keeps itself relatively compact. All the other posts are all the other values here, title, first name, and so on. So again, we're doing what we've done before. We're taking the post information and we're putting it to IDs. So there's no difference between this and the add system. The only difference is that we don't use the query we had for add. Sorry, I was just selecting everything there. We're actually using an update query. So we're not inserting data, we're updating the table. So we use an update query here, and we tell it here to update TBL context, so the table name, setting, so set str title to the value, and again notice quotes because this is a string. There's the variable name because I've used speech marks at the end. I can use variable names in here, so it will replace that with whatever was in the text box that was sent over when I hit the submit button. And there's the field name, so it's always field name equals, and then if it's text, in quotes, text you want conveyed. The part that tells it where to say at the end, where contact ID equals $ID. Now that needs to be a one-to-one match, or where those match up, and quite simply $ID was the hidden field. So if I pass through value 3, as I have done here, then rather than crashing, when I've clicked on 3, this one will run this page here, put 3 there, where contact ID equals 3, I only have one record where it's 3, so it changes the title to whatever was passed over, the first name, whatever was passed over. Notice I only changed the misses, but actually I'm updating everything. So everything gets updated, but it's actually only the misses part that's changed. I could do a test to find out which part, but to be honest, this is quick and easy. Obviously this doesn't run the query, this is simply a string being stored in a variable, and it's not until I get here that I execute that SQL. That executes it and puts the result in here. Again, I don't need this variable as such. I could have quite simply run this as a subroutine, but actually in here I might as well store it, because if anything ever goes wrong I can put a flag, test this out and see what happens. Header, by the way, if you're wondering what the hell I mean by that, I could simply put in echo $edit_result, and that would send to the screen whatever edit result was, so I could see the error message or whatever else was being sent back, or see if there was an error there, and then I can find out how to get exact error messages sent out. There is a problem with that, and that's the next line. The next line actually states categorically header location index.php. So if I did what I just did, this next line would then clear the page, take me to my home page, and exit the code. So I would lose any error message. So I'd need to remark this out, and we did the remarks very early on. So I could just simply either delete these, or the simplest way, the nicest way, is to remark it out, so it simply becomes a comment in the box. But that would allow me to then test the error if it had an error. But this doesn't, it works, so there's no point. So simply run the query, store a result, go back to the home page, and stop running any other code, so I don't get all of this appearing, all this lower code. So all that happens is when I make the change to Mrs. Minnie Mouse, Minnie's decided she's not marrying him, she jilted him at the altar. Poor old Mickey, poor thing. Anyway, click on save, and bang, it's made a change, take me back. That's the edit page. I hope that's been useful. Next one clearly is delete.